One. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in. It is Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey here. Andrew Mason as well as we discuss the Denver Broncos. And Mace, it never stops with this team. It never stops with the wide receiver talk. One of your latest at denversports.com is now there are reports surfacing that the Baltimore Ravens have called about Courtland Sutton. So while the Broncos are in the business of gathering talent per Sean Payton, it sounds like other teams are still trying, and now Baltimore seems to be a new team in the mix.
Yeah, Baltimore in the mix for both Courtland Sutton and DeAndre Hopkins. That they're basically exploring their options. I mean, the thing is, I don't think it invalidates anything that Sean Payton said this week, because Sean Payton talked about how they didn't really have any interest in making a trade at this time. And, it doesn't, just because you say that doesn't mean interest is going to go away. And in fact, Payton predicted that as you got closer to the draft, you would hear more teams, because in his mind, this draft class is not exceptional when it comes to wide receiver talent. Thus, he feels like there are going to be teams teams that are knocking. Now, the thing with Courtland Sutton, if the Ravens are interested in Courtland Sutton and not Jerry Jeudy, you're probably talking about a relatively minimal price that you're going to get back for Courtland Sutton. And I think this is one of those examples where if the Broncos are demanding a second-round pick, I don't think they're going to get it for Courtland Sutton. But what if it's a third-round pick to take that, not only take Courtland Sutton, but I think the thing is take the contract off their hands. And I think that's a key element right there.
Yeah, that's a key element as well. And I know it's not purple and black today, I guess. Is that the Ravens colors, right?
Purple and black.
Purple and black. It does make one wonder, like, what in the hell's going on in the Lamar Jackson situation and the alleged collusion or whatever from NFL owners. It's just like, okay, they're going to get him Courtland Sutton. They might not even have Lamar Jackson as their quarterback. And, oh, yeah, they're installing a new offense, and Lamar Jackson isn't there. So, like, it's just kind of the Ravens situation is weird. I don't have a lot of good things to say about the Ratbirds. I know Brandon Stokely gets mad at me every time because he won a Super Bowl with said team, and probably one of the worst Super Bowls ever, Super Bowl 35. Hey, it's Kerry Collins against the historic Ravens defense, everybody. But, like, I mean, you're getting Sutton for maybe Lamar Jackson? Maybe?
Yeah, or Brett Huntley, who was, he was, good enough. Or did I say Brett? I always get Brett, or I always get my Huntleys mixed up.
Yeah, there's Huntley and Huntley.
Huntley. Tyler.
Tyler Huntley. Yeah,
Tyler Huntley. Yeah, I dadgummit, I knew I was gonna make that mistake. But I mean, that's basically what you'd be doing, right? And I think it's interesting that when you're talking about both Hopkins and Sutton, the Ravens are interested in them no matter whether Lamar Jackson is back or not, which also I think this would be a little bit of a mistake for the Ravens, but it also tells you that Baltimore still believes they can be competitive even if they trade Lamar Jackson. It's an organization that has much the same belief in itself to have a decent competitive season without a great quarterback as the Pittsburgh Steelers do. Like in Pittsburgh, they can go 8-8 with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, taking the snaps, right? Right. Baltimore went 8-9 when Huntley played down the stretch of the 2021 season. And I think Josh Johnson also got in there as well because of injuries, COVID, and all of that. But then last year, when Huntley got in there, we did see the late drive against a very good Broncos defense to win, a very good and also, I think, very over everything Broncos defense at that point. And then you saw Huntley do enough to make sure they were still a playoff team, and that team was, you could say, a goal line fumble away from beating Cincinnati in the wild card round and doing it with Huntley at quarterback. And so that's how, if you're the Ravens, like, okay, why would you be seeking wide receivers if you're not going to have Lamar Jackson? They look at the season that they just had and say, well, you know what? you can say we came within an eyelash of winning at Cincinnati without Lamar Jackson. We feel like we're still competitive, even if you take Lamar Jackson out of the equation. And that's why they can rationalize being in the mix. And of course, the other thing is, presumably, if you move on from Lamar Jackson, whether it's via via being traded after being tagged, or simply moving on as a franchise tag, and they get back the compensation from whatever team signs them. Either way, that bolsters their draft capital and gives them some draft capital to play with, to where they think, oh yeah, we could use that on a wide receiver that could help the prospects of Huntley. Another thing is also the Ravens wide receivers, that it's a need. It's just simply a need, no matter who the quarterback is. They don't have enough good, solid pass catchers over there. So it's one of those things where if you could get the terms right, it would actually make some sense for both sides, I believe.
Yeah, and whereas Detroit Mission Control says Cortland Sutton is in a shoe number 1, he might be in Baltimore. Their best receiver is Mark Andrews, and he's a flipping tight end.
Yeah.
So, like, they've been searching for wide receivers. It's one of my, I always side with the players, but it's one of my reasons for siding with Lamar Jackson, and plus I hate Baltimore, is like, you've never given him anything for what he hasn't developed as a passer. Look at what happened to Jalen Hurts when they give him A.J. Brown. Now, part of that is on Hurts and the development, the steps forward that he took. But you and I were at that Senior Bowl where Jalen Hurts was there with Justin Herbert, and there were days that Steven Montez looked better than Jalen Hurts. And that's no hyperbole, and that's praising Montez, but it's also showing how far Hurts has come and then getting him a superstar receiver. I'm not saying Cortland Sutton is A.J. Brown. He's not. But you see the difference that made for Hurts. So you can't really blame Lamar Jackson for not taking these strides as a passer when they're not really giving him the targets that he needs.
Yeah, they gave him Mark Andrews. They've always been very good at tight end, because for a minute there they had both Mark Andrews and Hayden Hurst. They took the old Mike Shanahan philosophy of, all right, let's pick a position and let's double down. Because you remember how Mike Shanahan, for example, back in the 05 draft, opened corner. And the Ravens, back at about, I believe it was the 2018 draft, went tight end. They picked Hayden Hurst. And then it was kind of shocking when they picked Mark Andrews after picking Hayden Hurst. And now it looks like a stroke of genius, because Hurst, pretty good, but they were willing to part ways with him and ride with Mark Andrews. That's the kind of thing that a good organization can do. An organization that feels confident enough in its roster and what it's done overall, that they can make moves like that, where Andrews falls like, okay, this guy is by far the BPA. Let's just go ahead and get him, even though we picked a tight end earlier on in the draft. So, but the thing is, they've done that. But yet, sometimes when you have that philosophy of not targeting a position and just saying, okay, we're just going to take the best player whatsoever, I think it helps your overall talent level. But then you end up with some spots that are lacking. And that being said, one of the reasons why the spot of wide receiver is lacking is because they traded Hollywood Brown to Arizona not too long ago.
Right. So they took his best wide receiver and they traded him away. By the way, Mace, there's many reasons why I love doing this show. You will be one of the few that will remember this, because the Ravens have done what you talked about twice.
Yeah.
They did it with Ed Dickson and Dennis Pitta.
That's right.
Well. And I don't know the year. Forgive me, my brain is mush.
Oh,
I'm watching David Durden from West Florida, because the Broncos had a top 30 visit with him. I already knew about him. He's kind of one of those scouting darlings. So, yeah, I can't remember the year Ed Dickson and Dennis Pitta came into the league, but I remember Baltimore has done that more than once at the tight end position.
Yeah, that's like 09, 2010, somewhere around there, maybe even a little earlier than that. The interesting thing on those two is that they were different types of tight ends, because Dixon was clearly more of a blocker and Pitta more of a pass catcher. The Hurst Andrews picks were interesting, because it was like you just picked two pass catchers, two guys who they could be in line. They had the bulk to be in line, but they were guys that you were also thinking could be moved tight ends in space. That was what was really interesting about that, was the skill sets that they selected. But like you mentioned, I mean, that Baltimore will do that. And you know what? Even though they've got Mark Andrews, because they tend to pick more for best player and we'll figure out everything later, you've got your piece up on tight ends already. I'm finishing my piece on the sleepers here right after the show at tight end. The Ravens will probably pick a tight end at some point because that's what they do. They pick where the draft is strong.
Right. And the draft is strong there. Now you're writing up Broncos, fits, and sleepers in the draft class. I'm writing up the entire class, and I have to throw in my section for favorites. But dude, I gotta tell you, I mean, and one of my sections in my article was called "Better Than Dulcich" because I have 8 tight ends that are graded higher than Greg Dulcich, and it's not a shot at Greg Dulcich. It's not saying that he can't play or whatever. He's a fan favorite. He's got great hair. I'm worried about his injury. I'm worried about him being one-dimensional. And I know that in this class, even where the Broncos are sitting, if their first pick was a tight end, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't encourage that, but I also wouldn't be surprised, Mace.
Wouldn't be surprised either. And I don't want to read too much into what Sean Payton said, but his reaction to Greg Dulcich, it was, not the pat on the back that maybe I think one would have expected. Sean Payton had a lot of praise for the free agents that he brought in, and maybe it's a function of he's studying free agents more than he studied the players who are coming back. But his statement about Greg Dulcich when he was asked about him was very short and not exactly effusive. I wish we'd had more time with Sean Payton. We used to get an hour at these coaches' breakfasts. Now we only get 30 minutes. I wish we had more time because it would have been good to kind of go through the roster with him, because I do wonder if he would have had a different assessment of Albert Okwuegbunam, for example, than what I thought was a very, very muted thoughts regarding a guy who was the Broncos tight end 1 for much of last year. And that tells me that they're looking for something else at the position. And the question is, are we talking about a 3rd round pick, or are we talking about something later? I think that's going to depend on how the draft board falls. Now, to me, one of the more intriguing tight ends as we get into this draft process here, and part of it is because the results over the last 2 months were kind of all over the place, and that's Payne Durham out of Purdue. And the film is good, especially as a pass catcher. Look, he's got a long way to go as a blocker. He's probably got to work on his lower body strength as well in order to improve there. He's very kind of lean on the lower body, and I think maybe he needs to kind of get some more core strength, or more strength in his quads and his calves, and have it build up from there. But this is a guy who's got excellent body control, very good at reading where the pass is going. There was one play at the Senior Bowl where does a really nice job with his route, basically using the linebacker as leverage, getting set up, and then makes a nice adjustment to kick for an outside shoulder catch for a touchdown there on a 20-yard. So it was 20-yard touchdown. That's where the line of scrimmage was, the 20. And yet he goes to the combine. He has the slowest 40 time of any tight end there. And so you'd think, oh man, here's a guy who he specializes as a pass catcher. He's somebody who has shown some ability in that department, but his time speed was 4.87 in the 40. Now his 10 speed is 10 and 20 splits. They weren't bad, but that's the kind of thing that could scare people off. Kind of like 11 years ago, a lot of people got scared off by Dan Trevathan's 40 time. Well, you popped on the film and he could play. You pop on the Payne Durham film, and here you see it. You see a guy making wonderful adjustments to the ball, making catches in traffic, doing a good job getting up and winning jump balls. He's a little under 6'6". He's got 33 plus inch arms. He knows how to use that body that he has, but he's probably going to fall somewhat because of that 40 time. And so when you're sitting there and you're the Broncos and you're looking for value as you get into day 3, someone like him who's got the good film but had struggled in the time speed, there are going to be teams that knock him down. You might be able to get good value on a guy like Payne Durham in round 5 or maybe even round 6.
Yeah, and I believe the Broncos had a formal interview with him at the combine. Correct me if I'm wrong
I
there.
believe they did. Yes. Yeah.
And it's one of those things. I've seen some 7-round mock drafts because there are people crazy enough to do that. Chad Ryder from NFL Network, he's my friend.
Yeah.
That have him falling to the 7th round.
Yeah.
So like
Fine.
you have some possibilities where it doesn't have to be 3rd round or 4th round. You could get that sort of value and that type of playmaker in the 7th round. I'm a big fan of Will Mallory,
Yeah.
So
Me too.
like I think they're, day 3 tight end is money.
Yeah. And the thing is, they're dropping to day 3 because they're incomplete puzzles. Okay. Will Mallory is another guy who really struggles as a blocker. Now you watch him in space. This guy can get up to speed in a hurry. I love the long stride that he has. This is somebody who's going to be able to have the capability of taking that short pass in the flat, turning upfield, and making that into an explosive play, in addition to being able to run routes down the seam. But again, he's 245 pounds. He's long and lean. If you put him in there as an inline blocker, he's going to get blown up. But this part of this is also, okay, you ask players to do what they do best. Sean Payton does that. Remember, Sean Payton had Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham, nobody's idea of a physical tight end, right? But he didn't ask Jimmy Graham to do the things that he couldn't do. He asked him to do the things that he could do, and as a result, you got a terrific player who was incredibly dynamic for the Saints passing game for quite a while.
Yeah, just you got to figure it out. And with the Broncos, we have faith that Sean Payton will. The chat room is fired up about the combine. Hell, Micah Meyer from Notre Dame had a bad combine, quote unquote bad combine, and he's the best tight end in this class, my opinion.
Yeah,
as the most highest floor tight end in this incredible tight end class. So you've got Broncos fits and sleepers, Mace. I can't wait for that article to debut at denversports.com. In this tight end class, I mean, we could have done the whole show on the tight ends.
Well, I'm sure we're going to come back to tight ends, even though we're writing today, because that was a nice kickoff to our series of draft pieces you're going to find at denversports.com. This is a position I think that we're going to circle back on. First of all, I don't believe the Broncos will only have 5 picks. I think they're going to end up with more. And that probably means one of those 3rd round picks ends up becoming a late 3rd round plus a day 3. Maybe even another trade to follow to turn a late 3rd rounder into 2 4th rounders, so you can start getting the draft number of draft picks up. I'd say I think the Broncos end up with at least 7 picks in this draft when all is said and done. And that's why if they make these trades down, you start looking, okay, where's the value going to be? The value is often, as you get in day 3, the value is often in guys who have good film, bad numbers, okay? Because teams will kind of say, okay, we're going to move them down a little bit. But this is where you have to kind of trust the film. I mean, you and I, we go to the Senior Bowl. I saw a lot of these guys work out the combine. You watch the combine workouts as well. But if you're asking me when I'm evaluating what I'm leaning on, if I see a guy look good at the Senior Bowl, look good at the Shrine, and I see the combine doesn't match that, I'm trusting the actual football work. Right. On that. And we actually saw more than a few guys that you and I really liked at the Shrine and Senior who didn't really dazzle at the combine. And you know what? That's okay. That's actually a good thing for the Broncos, because if they end up doing well at the combine and they end up checking all the boxes and having to cross over on the Venn diagram of good combine, good all-star week, all of a sudden that's how guys push up. And frankly, now with the Broncos not having a 1st or 2nd round pick, that's where some of them start going to maybe out of the Broncos' reach. I mean, that's where, is Tyjae Spears out of the Broncos' reach? Maybe. Right. He's kind of right on the fence of somebody who might be there and might not. But some of these guys we're talking about are players that, they don't have both, but we liked what we saw when they were actually doing football stuff. And they're going to be there as you get into round 4, round 5, round 6. And I think you're going to be able to get some guys who can play and help this team right away.
Yeah, and that's good news for the Broncos. I think people overreact to the Senior Bowl. Hell, I used to, all the time. Like, I love Lorenzo Booker and all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, you get that way, but teams get that way. Teams get that way over the combine. And I've had a general rule of thumb in talking to general managers and decision makers in the league, Mace. You never really move a guy more than a round up or a round down. If he has a great Senior Bowl, I remember Carson Wentz when he came out. And even his agent at the Shrine Bowl was talking to me about, like, I hope, like, it's kind of, gets that catapult. Like, there was already this swell of hype building for Carson Wentz. He was a darling in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and he goes from, like, a late first round, early second round to top of the first round. Like, okay, so that's fair. Medicals, another Carson Strong, like, medicals will have you drop out of the draft. But if you do really good at the combine or really bad at the combine or really good at your pro day or really bad at your pro day, we're talking about a round worth of movement if you're a wise team.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned Carson Wentz because a story on him is that going into that whole process, he was on the Broncos' radar.
Oh, yes.
They knew they were going to be picking later, and Elway even mentioned it on the record at his pre-draft press conference that year on Carson Wentz that they were really interested in him, but going from pick 32, they didn't have the ammunition to do it. Now, if Wentz had not had that bump and it ended up being picked, say, around pick 20, pick 21, I think there's a very good chance Denver would have traded up and Carson Wentz would have been a Denver Bronco.
And they moved up anyway for Paxton Lynch. They moved up to 26, and I believe they were 31 that year. Weren't the Patriots suspended or something?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, so 30.
Right.
Yeah, 30,
so it's like they
31.
already went from 31 to 26 for Lynch, who most everyone had a first-round grade on. Whatever. We know history's different there. But Wentz was certainly, and the other guy, I hate to bring this up, Mace, but it was Dak Prescott. Like, if Prescott hadn't missed his private workout because of Orlando traffic, maybe Broncos history is different.
Yeah, because maybe they wouldn't have said, "Okay, we got to move up and get Paxton Lynch there." But the other bonkers thing to consider is that if even with the missed flight, if Seattle takes Dallas's offer on Paxton Lynch, and then you get to the end of the second round and Dak Prescott's there, he still might have been a Bronco, even despite that missed flight. And in fact, I mean that's you look back on that and it was kind of a perfect storm. But if you put Dak Prescott on that Broncos team in 2016, man, they win 12 or 13 games. It's a sad what if to think about.
Yeah, and I will say this because the Paxton Lynch story, everyone has their own story. Two other teams hot after him that year, Dallas. Jerry Jones lost sleep because the Broncos leapfrogged him. And the other team was Kansas City. Andy Reid loved Paxton Lynch. So say what you will or whatever, but imagine how the AFC West would have looked different because they would have had Paxton. They would have not taken Mahomes, most likely. I mean, things would look much, much different here in the AFC West.
Who said Broncos couldn't have gotten Mahomes? But they probably wouldn't have because if they do end up with Dak Prescott, then all of a sudden they're not in the market for a quarterback because Prescott fell all the way to round 4 that year.
Yes. Had the DUI, I think, somewhere after the combine, I believe.
He did.
Yeah.
But even with the missed flight, what I've gathered is I don't think he would have made it to day 3 if the Broncos had not already taken Paxton Lynch. Of course, to go back to something we discussed earlier, in retrospect, the Broncos should have doubled up at quarterback. Again, the Mike Shanahan thing. He tripled up at corner back in 2005, but in 2012 with Washington, he doubled up at QB because he went with, of course, RG3 in the first round, and then later on picked Kirk Cousins to open the 4th round. And, RG3 flashed early. Kirk Cousins, for all the warts, Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback, right? I mean, for a 4th round pick, Washington got massive value out of him. He led him to a division title, and we see he may not be able to get you over the hump, but I'd say 2/3 of the league would rather have Kirk Cousins than the quarterback they have.
And that says something. It is orange and blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. And we got to get to it, or else I'm going to just keep it on the left side of our screen.
Yeah.
The Samaje Perine can start. I believe it was George Payton, who at the owners' meeting said that he could start. I had it pulled up, and now I have taken it away. But, like, okay.
I think it was Sean Payton. I think it was
Sean Payton that said he's got the capability to start while Javonte's out. I won't belabor it because, again, this is something you and I will dance about this entire offseason. I'm a bit higher on Perine than you. You believe he can start, but we no matter what, we will see a committee, whether it's Perine and a rookie or Perine and whoever, and then it'll be Javonte and Perine is the number 2. But I just did want to pick your brain more about Samaje Perine and his early season role for the Broncos.
Yeah, and what Sean Payton said was that you see him in early downs and you see him playing third down. So that's like basically you covered everything right there. Praised his ability to catch pass out of the backfield. Praised his big pickup. Praised his intelligence. Praised his toughness. And okay, there you go. That's kind of the complete package, right? If you're going to be a running back in the NFL. I'd still feel more comfortable if there's somebody in there who can bring some explosiveness. But right now, it's trending toward Perine being the starter. And when Sean Payton was asked about Latavius Murray, by the way, asked right after he talked about Perine, was asked about whether Latavius Murray could come back, Sean Payton's answer was, we'll see. Now, we know that Sean Payton has praised Latavius Murray in the past. We also know there's no reason to sign Latavius Murray right now, that he's going to stay on the market. For me, Latavius Murray is a guy that you bring in if you do not draft a running back. And even then, if you have a priority free agent running back coming after the draft, I'm still not sure that you bring back Latavius Murray right away. I think Latavius Murray could be sitting there on the shelf until the start of training camp. And in that case, you might as well just go through the process of seeing what you've got with younger running backs around Perine, and then if you need Latavius, he's there. That's what I get out of it in terms of how Latavius Murray might fit on the Broncos. And if he does, and if you need him, great. You trust him. He knows the scheme. He knows the nomenclature. He should be able to step in and help you and be a positive player right away. But you don't have to do that right now. And certainly if you get a running back in the draft in the middle rounds, I don't think you need Latavius Murray. I think you're fine with Perine and what you draft. That's a good one too.
To me, is the Broncos version of Tommy Boy. Not here or here so much, but right here. And here, what he is he's the cheese pizza in the trunk. You know what I mean? Like, why was Tommy Boy so relaxed when he wanted the chicken? Tommy want wingy. Why was he so relaxed? Because if the waitress said no, they had a cheese pizza in the trunk. Go find your rookie running back. Okay, that 7th rounder, whoever didn't work out, or Tavian Thomas is better on a practice squad or whatever. You got Latavius Murray and the cheese pizza in the trunk, baby. It's just as good.
There's no urgency, right? And you know what? And if somebody signs Latavius Murray because they need him sooner, oh well. I mean, look, Latavius is a really good dude. I really liked covering him. I liked talking to him last year. But you know, there's him. You can bring back Marlon Mack. He's still out there as well. I mean, those dudes, they're gonna be available. That's just the way running back is right now. Those dudes who can just step in, give you some carries. And again, so basically you got Murray, and then you got the backup plan beyond Murray if you need a contingency, and that's Marlon Mack, and they're still out there to be had. I'm not worried about that at all. Just let's go with Perine. Go with who you draft. Let's see what they can do. And again, hopefully, knock on wood, in terms of how much you're asking of one of these guys to be a primary running back or part of a 1-2 punch, hopefully what you're asking is 6 weeks. Because you start Javonte on the PUP list, and then you say, okay, let's have this dude, our bell cow, as ready to go as possible by late October. You don't have to rush him back. And that's another thing. I don't want to see this look like KJ Hamler, where you panicked and you rushed him back when Tim Patrick got hurt. Do not do that. And I think the Broncos won't do that. Listening to Sean Payton, listening to even Greg Penner talk this week, there is a patience about the Broncos that I don't think we've seen in the past. Greg Penner's talk, he talks about expectations, and he's talking about culture, and he's talking about having the right people and the process, right? Sean Payton is talking about culture and process. It's not that it doesn't matter that you don't want to do your best right now, but I don't think we're going to see these panic type of moves with players on the roster rushing him back the way you saw last year. So I think Javonte is going to get all the time he needs to recover. And by the way, the other Payton, George Payton, specifically walked back his comments about Javonte maybe being ready for week 1. He kind of stepped back from that when he met with the media on Monday out in Phoenix. I think that was a key as well. That's a sign that tells you they're going to take their time with Javonte, and that's okay. It's what they should do given the severity of his injury.
They have patience because they have security. They have security in ownership. They have security in their head coach, and that is something to continue to feature and highlight. It is Orange and Blue today, every day, 3:30 p.m. Mountain Time. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on Twitter, @MaceDenver. I am @Cecil Lammey, saying until next time, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, and as always, stay frosty.